Hello, and thank you for tuning into my channel, and I hope today that you'll really enjoy this video. It's about phrasing and what that has to do with drumming. So if you like what you see, please consider liking and subscribing. So now that we got that out of the way, phrasing is often a subject that's been very misunderstood in the drumming community and in the musical community at large. So let's break it down by definition. This is what I was taught by Jamie Faunt when I was teaching at the Faunt School when I did his rhythm course as I was training as a teacher. The simplest explanation is that a phrase is a group of bars. But what is in that group of bars? It's the melody. Specifically, what melody is the theme of a song. It could be done instrumentally, or most of the time in pop music is done with a vocal, and in jazz music as well. So why do we need to know about phrasing? Well, if you're considering to have a long and prosperous career as a drummer, you should know about phrasing, because you have to know when to fill as a drummer. And you fill in the spaces of the phrase so you don't step on the melody. We're going to go over that more. So let me give you an example. And this is a song written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney on one of their early hits. It's an 8-bar phrase. And it goes like this: close your eyes. That's one. So it goes, close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember I'll always be. 7, 8, and then 1. So you see there were 2 bars there, if you listen to the song, that have nothing but rhythm in it. There's no drum fill, and Ringo was probably very correct in just leaving a drum fill out there. Sometimes it's better not to fill the space of the phrase. Now, if you were singing the song and it's going, close your eyes and I'll kiss you tomorrow. You get the point? Okay, good. So, as a young drummer setting out on my career, I was so focused on technique and chops that if there was a 16th note rest, I try to fill it. That breaks the groove of the song. So even your greatest technicians know how much or how little to fill during phrasing. And that's what makes it important, because it's kind of left to it's kind of like, as Jamie says, a mark of maturity of songwriters that they can understand phrasing. But Jamie broke it down in a very, very simple way. So let's take a look at that. And I'll go over one basic simple phrase. So we have a 2-bar phrase. So what does that mean? That's something that occurs over 2 bars where the melody will either stop on the downbeat of the 2nd bar, which would be called a primary phrase, because it stops sooner. It's like the end of a paragraph. It would stop on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 on the downbeat of that bar. And then you would have 2, 3, 4 of space. A secondary phrase stops 3/4 of the way through. Now the primary phrase, I didn't say this, but it stops halfway, which would be 50%. So we're dealing with 8 beats. Now here's where some drummers get a little crazy, because they flunk fractions. So it's really true. I've run across that teaching, for as long as I've been teaching, where I'll have a block with the student because they didn't understand fractions. They kind of check out. So it's very important to understand that if you're teaching. So you have 8 beats and 2 bars if you're in 4 beats to the bar, which we call quadruple meter. 4 beats in each bar. I'm not even going to go into time signatures, because that's a whole other story. So if we look at that, there are 8 beats that cover 2 bars. So 1, 2, 3, 4, you end on the 1. That's 50%, or half, where the ending point lands on the downbeat of the next bar. Then 3/4 of the way through would end on the 3rd beat of the 2nd bar. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we have this format here, and I'm going to put it up here on the screen for you to see. This is an excerpt from the rhythm course pack that everybody, I think, should get, because drummers really need to understand rhythm, not just rudiments, but all the aspects of rhythm that go into music. And the reason why, if you notice when you watch jazz drummers, when they cut loose for a solo, it's not an open solo. They'll do a 32-bar solo and the band knows exactly where to come in because they could hear the phrasing over the 32 bars within that form of the song. And the drummer knows those phrases and he alters them and plays with them, and then the whole band, he never needs to cue the band back in. They'll all know when to come in, and that's because they understand phrasing. So I'm putting this up there right now for you to see.
What you're looking at here is a 2-bar phrase with 4 beats in each bar. What happens here is when you start to play on the one and you end on the one of the next bar, that would be a primary phrase, a 2-bar primary phrase. Where it ends on the 3 would be a 2-bar secondary phrase. So if you ended on the primary phrase, you would have 3 beats there before the end of that bar where you could possibly fill or do something in there that would be musical. Where the secondary phrase is on the 3, where it stops on that 3, you really only have 1 beat, that last beat there that you could fill. You maybe can do a little pickup into the next phrase there. It depends. One thing to remember is that no matter how long the phrase is, a primary phrase will end halfway through the length of that phrase, and a secondary phrase will end 3/4 of the way through. So you would have to determine how long the phrase is to know where the primary was or where the secondary was.
Now I'm going to do a demonstration on the drums here with 1/8 notes, doing a 2-bar secondary followed by a 2-bar primary. Here we go. Sound familiar? It's almost like a New Orleans feel, a Bo Diddley feel. Well, that's a 2-bar secondary followed by a 2-bar primary. It's not just... Now that's fine and good. I've heard Buddy play at that tempo, but still do phrases while he's doing that. That's why his solos sometimes, when he breaks from the technical side of it, sound so rhythmical. So again, triplets. In there. But there are variations with all of these phrases. You can start with a pickup. You could end after that beat where you're supposed to stop with a beat or a subbeat. You could delay it. And all of these things play into your solo. Now, when you're playing in the studio and you're listening to the phrases of the song, of what the melody is, when you hear those spaces, sometimes naturally you'll fill that space. And that's good if you feel that naturally. But did you know that that's what you were doing? So the more control you have over phrasing, the more you can solo with phrasing, eventually you can feel a whole 32-bar solo with the phrases in the section of the form as 1 beat. It starts, and then after 32 bars, it's back in. And that's what we're looking for in the training on the rhythm course. So that's a brief explanation of what phrasing is and what it could do for you as a drummer. And I suggest you start diving into it as soon as you can and start listening to music to find the spaces of the phrases, count the bars and how long those phrases lasted and where they ended, where they started, where they ended. Sometimes you'll run into Sometimes you'll run into odd bar phrasing, where you have 5 bars and 7 bars or 9 bars, and the same rules apply. You may have an added bar of rest, but that is covered later on. Right now, just get the basics of it down, because that'll help you to solo a lot better and be more musical and be able to back up a band better by not stepping on the melody. I hope you enjoy this. Thank you very much for watching.